But in the day of Paul and the day of Jesus, you could go to a temple, literal temple, where they had this big God Eros, and you could go ahead and worship him, and you do it by sex. To show you how serious this thing was, Corinth, which is the city where Paul went to, where he sent a letter and he went to preach. The word Corinth means corrupt. You shouldn't forget that. So Corinthians means corruption. What a name to give a city. The Romans called it Corinth because it was such a corrupt city. That's what they named it. When they took over, they called the city corruption. And in the city of Corinth is where they had one of the largest temples to Eros. And it was in the city of Corinth where they used to have prostitutes, both male and female, that used to live right around the corner from, right in the porches of the temple, these little huts. And so when you wanted to worship, you had your available partner. Sad, huh? And so they had a city full of prostitutes, homosexual prostitutes and heterosexual prostitutes. Paul begins to allude to these particular people sometimes in his writings when he was talking to them about letting their hair grow back and they shouldn't cut their hair and that kind of thing to the women, because the prostitutes who live in the temples used to shave their hair, and that's how you identified them. See, shave their hair, and they used to wear all kind of bands of jewels all around their hands and their upper arms and long earrings, and they were all painted up, and so you couldn't miss a worship partner, if I may use that word. And that's why the male prostitutes used to let their hair grow. Isn't that strange? Man always reversed God's order. And so you had men with long hair, long hair, and that's how you could tell if this guy was available. So if you come, if you pass through the city and you want to stop and worship Eros, you don't have to guess about making a mistake. You would go to a young girl, she may slap you in your face. But then with these folks, ain't no way you could miss them. And so when Paul went there and began to preach the gospel, many of these people who used to worship the god of Eros, they got saved. They came to Jesus and they gave their lives to the Lord. And many of them used to, when they go to church, the women, they used to be going to church, to the church house to worship, and they had problems because the hair didn't grow overnight. You understand the problem? They had bald head and all these earrings and makeup still on. They didn't know you got saved. They didn't know anything about this thing. Young Christians. So when they were going on their way to the temple, here comes these guys, hey baby, let's go worship. And they had problems with this. You're trying to explain to these fellas, hey, we changed. And the men who got saved had the same problem, Women coming to them or other men come to them and and the guy says, no man, I'm changed. But they see your long hair still on and they see the girl's hair still shaved. So Paul had to solve the problem. They wrote him a letter and said, Paul, we're having problems, man. People, harassing us. So he said, tell the women let their hair grow, and while they're waiting, let them cover their heads. So nowadays, people wear hat. They don't know why Paul said, well, cover your head. See, they prostitutes. It's amazing how we twist doctrine and mess things up. Eh? Now we got all the churches wearing hats, and they don't know why Paul said wear hats. See, you never had a prostitute problem with a bald head. So I can't tell you wear a hat, cover your head. Because it doesn't relate to you. It has nothing to do with you. It was a personal situation in a certain time, at a certain place, with a certain problem. Now when you make that a doctrine, you're in trouble. Then the same passage Paul tells the men, he says, and men, cut your hair, because nature does prove that God created men to have short hair. It's better for you, and etc. That's what he meant by that when he told the men to cut them, cut their hair. He says, cut your hair, plus it's better for you anyhow. Okay. And nature proves it's healthier for a man to have shorter hair. So Paul was writing those things to deal with this problem with Eros. These people used to be a part of that cult. Well, I said that just to give you some background on how serious this particular God was and still is. Once again, I'd say that he is still probably the number one problem today. This demon, Eros.